I'm using this rust hole in a 72 Buick Electra as part of the demonstration of the Flameweld Mig145FX flux core welder. Originally, I was just going to use fiberglass putty to fill in the hole, since my mechanic buddy Eric is just going to flip the car. But my fellow YouTuber Bare Budget Garage requested a demonstration of my welding technique, so I decided to just go ahead and throw a quick patch in this spot. The sound failed on the camera I was recording this with, so sorry that you can't hear the sound of the welder and all that, but I'm just going to do this voiceover on it so it will be understandable what I'm doing. This rust out was caused by the massive amount of dirt that had piled up in behind it that would get wet and cause it to rust from the inside out. When using flux core, I don't like to grind too far away from the seam so that there's less area that can have the little spatter balls on it that have to be ground off. My buddy Eric has all kinds of pieces and parts sitting around that I can use, so I'm just going to cut a little section out of this door to make my patch. I lay the masking tape on outside of the actual markings because I want my patch to be a little bigger than the hole. Just in case you haven't noticed, this video is at double speed, so if you want to see it at actual speed, and slow it down to 0.5. Just got to grind off the cutter flash off the back side so that it will slide into place easy. Once again, just grind it far enough to clean it up for the weld. I'm using a coarse fiber disc for grinding the paint off so that I don't grind metal. I'm sliding the piece in behind so that after it's welded, it won't be a raised area that I have to deal with. It'll be easy to fill in with my fiberglass filler. This upper corner is sunk in, so I'm going to grind it back a little bit so I can weld a nail to it so I can pull it out to make the first weld up there at the corner. The grounding port on the Flameweld flux core welder is a dense connector, so I have my arc welding stinger attached to it to use as my ground. And I'm going to weld this nail to the patch, and then also use this nail to pull the metal outward to meet up with the hole so that I can weld it in place. I've pulled it flush, now I'm welding it. I run my amperage much higher than suggested so that I can get instantaneous fusion. The longer you keep an arc going, the more warpage you get from the heat you transfer into the metal around the weld. It takes far less than a second to blow a hole in sheet metal with the amperage I'm using, so the trigger time can be described as blips. I've welded another nail at the opposite corner to pull it flush with the back side of the hole so that I can weld it. Just like an arc welding rod, sometimes you have to scratch your wire along to get the arc to start. I like to use the Harbor Freight flux core cone for the gun so that I can easily see what I'm doing with my weld, whereas the cone that came with it kind of blocks your vision sometimes. Also, I forgot to mention that a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch stick out of the wire is much better than trying to hold it real close to the workpiece. Just in case you buy one of these welders, I'll tell you right now that I've set the amps at 70 and the voltage amp modification down to -20. This metal is a little bit thicker, but for 22 gauge using this welder, I would probably set it at 60 amps with -20 on the volt amp difference. Since there's a curve at the back by the wheel opening, I'm not too worried about warpage, so I'm gonna weld this area fairly fast. But even though I'm welding kind of non-stop, it's so short of weld time that it's not even really getting it all that hot. It's going to be a little more difficult to weld this upper seam since it's not laying flush. I think I didn't get enough of the grinder flash off of the original metal on the back side, so it's not laying flat against it, which will just make it a little more time consuming to weld, but we can still weld it together without any great issue. I'm going to use my Gerber to push it down a little bit and get it a little closer. Try not to weld the Gerber to the metal. There went Eric sneaking by. He's mechanicking while I'm body working. I'm going to re-weld my ground on back here where I'm finished welding, so it's out of my way. I'm going to turn the welder down now to 60 amps with -20 voltage difference so that I can weld on the rusty metal near the front and also make it a little easier to fill the big gap at the top. When you're trying to weld rusty metal, then the blip becomes a millisecond. When you're welding metal that has a gap, then these super short bursts puts a bead at the edge of the metal and makes it less likely to blow the hole, so that you can come back and weld it again and get it connected with the other piece. We'll call it stitching because that's what it looks like you're doing, is stitching it together. It may not end up being the prettiest weld you've ever seen, but I guarantee you it's welded. It'll be 100% penetration. Even at 60 amps, it's pretty hot, so you still have to let off that trigger almost as soon as you pull it. On a long seam in a panel, you should take time in between these stitching spots to avoid getting the panel hot. Like put one stitch in the middle, then one stitch at the back, and then one stitch at the front. Then let it cool a little bit, and then repeat the same process over and over again until the weld is complete. I'm going fast and furious here because it's a short section and I don't have to worry about warpage very much. There's a section there right behind the piece of chrome that's there for the bumper surround that is rusted in behind the chrome, so I'm not even going to be able to do any welding there. I'll be filling that part with Duraglass. So you armchair body men, don't be telling me that ain't how you do it and that ain't right, because I was planning on filling the big old hole with Duraglass in the first place. So this repair is righter than what I had originally planned. Here you can see the gap between the chrome and the new patch that's just rusted out metal gone. I'll put tape on the chrome when I put the filler in there. The bead is very low, but I take a cutoff wheel on die grinder and grind down the higher spots before doing any other kind of grinding. It's much faster than a grinder disc. Now I'm going to use the fiber disc to take the paint and the flux powder and stuff off away from the weld. I'll take the thick paint and primer off the patch panel that I had left on there to keep from getting flux core beads stuck to it with this fiber disc, and then I'll finish it off a little bit with a regular grinder disc before I put the fiberglass filler on it. While I like to put my filler over sanded paint, you want to make sure and get all the burnt paint off because it has no strength and it will peel. I look back at the timestamp that's up in the upper left corner, and this entire process took less than an hour to complete. It would have taken longer with the MIG welder due to the differences in the welding process and also the grind time to grind down the thick bead that a MIG welder would have left. Got it all ground clean, just need to straighten up the bottom edge a little bit there, and it's ready for filler.